Good morning, beautiful people. It is Sarah Willoughby from sarahwilloughby.com.au. I'm very excited today to have beautiful Anna Bohnengel with me, and she is going to be sharing her beautiful story with us and also the work that she does in the nutrition space. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to be here.
We have just met, but I loved our conversation and I wanted to invite you on. So I'm going to start by sharing your bio because I can't do it justice. So Anna mentions that making a baby may be natural, but that doesn't mean it's always easy. And I know that for sure. And it's not something we talk about. Anna can help you as a registered dietitian trained at the National Institutes of Health with first-hand experience in fertility struggles. She has spent the last decade empowering women to take control of their health and fertility. Professional hat off, she is an exercise enthusiast, outdoor adventurer, tacovore. Is that somebody who loves tacos, or is that something different?
I made that term up, tacovore. I eat a lot of tacos.
I was reading that and I was like, okay, I think that's what she means. We're just checking. And a boy mum in small town Ashland, Oregon. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Sarah.
I would love for you to start by sharing your story, sharing your journey through infertility with us.
Yeah. Okay. Confession from the get-go is that I have trouble keeping this concise, so I'll do my best not to be too long-winded.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, because my journey, it's been a long one, and actually, it actually started more professionally. So my first position, over a decade ago as a dietitian was at an academic medical center where I was hired to help develop and disseminate a prenatal public health program for the doctors and the nurses and the researchers and the educators at this academic medical center. So from the very onset of my career, I was really immersed in the data and the research around how powerful nutrition and lifestyle can be for better prenatal outcomes for both the mom and the baby, and actually for generations to come. So, I had this seed in the back of my head about how much power women can have in this arena in terms of their health and experience of pregnancy. And then I was also seeing the fact that even though I was working with doctors and nurses and, at a world-class academic medical center, there was still so much room for more support and more information, and that they were really receiving so little guidance. I don't want to speak to how it is in Australia, but in the US, women get told really like, oh, you want to make a baby? Great. Take a prenatal, try for 6 or 12 months, then come back. Like, that's all you get.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, I was really inspired by this opportunity to give women more, feeling like women deserve more. And then, fast forward a few years when I started trying to conceive, I was 34 at that point. So, I still felt young, but I know in the world of obstetrics, that's considered advanced maternal age once you turn 35.
I know, right?
It's not fair. But I don't know, I was like, I thought I was really healthy at that point, I was running marathons and I ate gobs of kale, and I wasn't too worried. So I went to my doctor. She took out the IUD, basically said, same party line, like take a prenatal for 6 months, then come back. But the thing was, I wasn't getting my period. And at least I wasn't getting it regularly enough, and I instinctively sort of knew that was a red flag. But my doctor had zero guidance to give me on that, and wouldn't even do any testing for after 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of sent me, that was the very beginning of my journey, being like, what's going on here? Why am I not getting my period? What do I do about this? And, it really took a lot of work, sort of emotionally and psychologically, to turn around a lot of my preconceived notions about what healthy meant, and really learning to nourish myself better. And I got to a place where I was getting my period a little more consistently, not by definition regular, but I finally conceived and then lost the baby.
I'm sorry.
And So then went back to my doctor. And at that point, I got her to do some testing and, nothing, they found nothing, right? Like they just said everything's normal, which for me was like so frustrating. I was like, not as anybody who's gone through this before, it's like, you want to do anything you possibly can to prevent that from happening again. So I really wanted answers and was so frustrated that there weren't any, or nobody was giving me any. So then, I mean, at that point, the doctor was like offering letrozole or Clomid and like, hey, we can just help you with some fertility treatments. And I just wanted, I don't know. At that point, I think I just wanted answers. I just didn't instinctively feel good about doing that without understanding why. So I worked with some naturopathic doctors and I don't know, anybody listening, I'm sure can relate. I went to a gazillion doctor's appointments and did so much testing. And, I had all kinds of issues that really needed uncovering. I had celiac disease, and because of that, other nutrient deficiencies. But then to make this long story long, I was able to turn that around and was, able to finally get my period regularly and get my first baby. And then, second time around, I had a really easy go at it. And I just felt so lucky and so blessed that I was able to, turn my subfertility into fertility. And so I guess what I left that whole experience with was just realizing like how much women are sort of stripped of their power in their journey into motherhood, right? Like just not given all of the information that they need to make the best decisions for them. I guess for me, it's not about whether you do fertility treatments or do it naturally. It's more just what I want to shout from the rooftops is that women deserve to know what all of their options are, and feel supported and, set up for success, no matter which route they go into motherhood. So that all led me to my private practice where I am today. So supporting women as they, work on their fertility and help them get their periods regular and get their hormones in balance and, set themselves up for success. I've developed this like 5-step process to help women make sure that they cover all the bases and can have that peace of mind that they're doing everything within their control. So that was a lot. I'll stop there.
No, that wasn't. Thank you so much for sharing. That's wonderful. Yeah. So the 5-step process that you work with women today, is that based on your own sort of tried and tested techniques and what you did to move your fertility from subfertility to fertility, as you explained?
I would say it's actually more what I developed afterwards. Like I think what I went through was sort of the wind about hard way, but then after, in retrospect, I was like, oh, I wish I had done this. And, oh, I wish I had done this. Right. And so then and then, from working with women, it sort of developed over the years of like, okay, this is what makes sense. It's kind of the process I wish I had rather than the process I did go through.
Yes, exactly. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But I guess if we hadn't been through the things that we've been through, we wouldn't be able to help more people. So there's definitely benefit in that, but let's help people not learn the hard way. I certainly learned the hard way on my journey. So yeah. So are you able just to explain a little bit more about how you work with clients and maybe a little bit about the process and what sort of goes into that? Because I know you work on a holistic level.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd be happy to. So, like, again, I don't know exactly how it works in Australia, but in the US, it's a very like one size fits all approach, right? Like if you're having any kind of period problems, you take the pill. If you're not getting pregnant, you take fertility treatments. And it really takes a very narrow view of women's fertility, just looking at their reproductive anatomy. And I really like to zoom out and look at like, what are all of the the multifactorial components of your health and well-being. And thus, like, what does it take for you to really thrive? And that's where, optimal fertility comes from. So I really like to take a very personalized approach. So that involves, doing some advanced testing. I consider myself a functional dietitian, meaning I do some advanced testing beyond what's offered in conventional care, but really so that we can have very customized, tailored solutions to each woman that I work with, and be looking not just at her reproductive anatomy, but how does her mental and emotional well-being influence come into play? You know, what about her microbiome and how well she's able to digest nutrients, and is there any inflammation in her gut, and how is her liver able to detoxify estrogens, and just really looking at the full picture. So those 5 steps, we really start with nutrition as the foundation, but it definitely doesn't stop there. Like, you know, I sort of meet every woman where she's at, and then we make sure that we look at all of the components of her health and well-being.
And I love that, because obviously the work that I do is very holistic in terms of that mind, body, spirit connection, which we'll dive into in a second. But can you just share a little bit more around how nutrition actually impacts our fertility?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, first to nerd out on the data a little bit, because this has been really well studied, you know, and so just in comparison, one round of IVF in the US anyway gives a woman who's under 35 years old like a 33% chance of going home with a baby, versus there's a fertility diet specifically that was developed out of Harvard School of Public Health that has been studied for nearly a decade with women, nearly 20,000 women across the US ages 28 to 42, and has found that with nutrition and lifestyle, you can reduce ovulatory infertility by 66%. Wow. So I specify ovulatory infertility because it's not, you know, for nutrition isn't as likely to be able to help with something anatomical like a blocked fallopian tube. However, sure, if there's like a hormonal or something blocking ovulation, that makes fertility nutrition statistically more than twice as likely to be able to improve ovulatory fertility. And so how it does this is, again, multifactorial. Like one, you know, I like to describe human nutrients as the building blocks of human beings, right? So if you think about it, like you need vitamin A is really key to cell differentiation, which means like in utero, cells need to decide if they're going to become an eyeball or a leg bone or a lung cell, right? And like, so you need key nutrients to navigate that process. You need good vitamin E for the endometrial lining. You need choline for neurological development. Like all of these nutrients are literally what build little humans. So at the most basic level, nutrition comes into play because you need all of the building blocks. But then also, you know, nutrition is really key to balancing your blood sugar. And we know, you know, it's been quite well studied that when blood sugar is off balance, even if it's subclinical, like we're not talking about necessarily type 2 diabetes, but subclinical ups and downs in blood sugar balance that cause spikes in insulin can impair egg quality, can throw off sex hormone levels. And so, you know, nutrition is a really key way to make sure that you're keeping your blood sugar levels balanced. You know, nutrition is a key intervention for bringing down inflammation, which is a major barrier to infertility. Nutrition helps a lot with management of some of the key conditions that block fertility, like PCOS and endometriosis. But, you know, last but definitely not least, I find that when women learn to truly nourish themselves really well, they also have so much more mental and emotional bandwidth, right? Like it's, you know, if you're not nourishing yourself well, you're exhausted and, you know, you just have less emotional capacity to deal with all of the decisions that are coming your way. And I think that there's just a lot of value to just having more energy and having more confidence to help you navigate the fertility journey.
Absolutely. I think that's so key because, as you said, it's such an emotional journey, isn't it? You know, at every sort of twist and turn, you know, all the appointments that you have already mentioned that we all go through and just being prodded and poked. It's that having to constantly pick yourself back up. It's that having to constantly reset yourself to be able to deal with the next obstacle, the next challenge, the next hurdle that is, you know, the journey of trying to have a baby. So just to be feeling better within ourselves and to be having more energy to be able to bring to the table in the first place is absolutely key. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you said it really well. Thank you for putting that so eloquently. Yeah.
Yeah. But what do you feel are some of the mistakes that women are making around nutrition? What are some of the things that we get told that are actually just not true, that are not helping us?
Yeah. Yeah. And this was like really maybe one of the biggest hurdles for me is as a dietitian, I had it so ingrained in me that like healthy is sort of used synonymously with getting skinny, right? And like equating, often as a dietitian, people will ask me like, is so-and-so food healthy? And what they mean is like, is this going to make me fat? And that is an association that really does not serve us. And in the realm of fertility, it's not about being skinny doesn't necessarily serve you, and so you need to make a huge mistake that people make is quote unquote clean eating or always trying to eat less or always trying to exercise more, but at a cost, right? Like it puts your body into starvation mode, which, stresses out your system and tells your body that it's not safe to reproduce. So really flipping the script there and not making health about some arbitrary number on the scale or your BMI or calories in or calories out, and like scrapping all of those numbers and really making it about nourishing yourself and how do you really feel, and having your energy, your exercise energize you and your food energize you rather than like constantly running at a deficit. So it's like, really a long-winded way of saying the biggest mistake is equating health with being skinny, and not that you have to like be, it's about being the right weight for your body and your metabolism. That there's no particular one ideal, but when your body is menstruating regularly, that's a really good indicator that things are healthy. And so a lot of the women coming to me are not menstruating regularly, which is a red flag that something's off.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my soapbox about that one. But I, some other things that I see are like, without getting sort of the foundations of nutrition and lifestyle in place, doing things like people will say like, what's the best fertility superfoods? That's like a question I get all the time, which I get why that's like a fun question, but you can't just like throw some goji berries or some like flax seeds on your diet or like on your oatmeal if you're not overall eating enough and eating enough of all of the right nutrients and in the right balance for blood sugar. Like you really have to have those foundations in place and vice versa, right? Like you can't just add in some superfoods, but you also, I see a lot of women just like sort of out of fear cutting things out. Like I'm going to cut out all the gluten or I'm going to cut out all the dairy. And like really often that just puts them at greater nutrient deficits because they're not giving their body everything they need to begin with. And then they're just cutting more out. So really making sure that you're giving your body everything you need. I guess that kind of comes full circle.
Yeah. And I've certainly learned that recently. I've been working with a colleague who's a clinical pharmacist and helps people to reverse diabetes. That's her area of specialism. And I've learned so much from just working alongside her in terms of the things that we're told about nutrition that are incorrect and what we actually need to do and how different we all are and how it is about balance. So I think that's really great that you've raised that. And also in relation to your sort of comments around weight, I think that's so important too, because I belong to lots of different groups online, and the amount of women that will say, I've been to my doctor, particularly women who've got PCOS like myself, I've been to my doctor and I've been told I just need to go away and lose weight. And it's almost like that's just the standard statement that is pushed out to people. And then a lot of people don't even know how to do that effectively because, as you said, nutrition is such an important part of that. And we get told so many different things that aren't even true. So they're not making any progress and just feeling completely defeated, which then affects their mental, the mental aspect of fertility. And so you have this kind of like downward spiral of just misinformation and people just losing time when time is quite critical for us on that journey. So even though I never had that weight issue. I'm very slim, so I have PCOS, but I don't present in the typical way in terms of weight issues. I certainly had lots of, I had irregular periods. It was just all over the place. Sometimes I just wouldn't ever have one, and sometimes I would permanently have one, and often I wasn't ovulating, and I didn't get any other guidance around how do we solve that? How do we get to the root cause of the issue? And that's what I love about the work that you do, is that you really help people get to the root cause of the issue rather than just putting a Band-Aid over it and moving somebody on.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And it's so true. I don't even consider a PCOS diagnosis the root cause. I think one of the major disservices that happens in conventional care is that somebody has PCOS, they assume that they're overweight and that they're insulin resistant. But like you said, you're slim and have PCOS. Weight really isn't have anything to do with it. We have to figure out what's driving your PCOS. Like, is there some inflammation? Is there stress, like taxing your adrenal glands? Is it a blood sugar imbalance issue? But it's not the same for every woman, right? So we have to look at what's happening with you. And in any of those scenarios, just going out and like depriving yourself of nourishment in the name of weight loss is gonna, like you said, it's gonna feed that downward spiral. This is something that I like to talk a lot about, but just what a disservice it is to tell women to just go lose weight when, it really has so little to do. Like the BMI, when you really drill down on the research and the connections between body weight and fertility, it's, they say they measure it in BMI, but it's not really about BMI. It's about body composition and having the appropriate ratios of muscle, of lean mass to fat mass. So you can be at a totally healthy BMI or overweight BMI, but be all muscle and not have enough body fat. And that is going to help, that's going to compromise your hormonal integrity, right? So you really have to drill down and take a more nuanced approach. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not surprising, is it, that everybody's just kind of, fumbling around and maybe taking steps in their fertility journey that they don't need to go down. I certainly was told the only way I was going to have another baby, because I went through secondary infertility, was to have IVF. And for me, as somebody with PCOS and under 35, I was at an increased risk of overstimulation in that cycle. Wasn't really explained to me, but I didn't just overstimulate, I hyperstimulated, and I ended up in intensive care. And I'm sure that if I had sat down with somebody like yourself and really looked at the other issues and looked at it from a holistic perspective, there would definitely have been things that I could have done to regulate my cycle and not be so reliant on drugs. And I don't say that to put people off fertility treatment, because we're all on our own individual path. And for some people, that is the only way that they can have a baby. And for them, it is absolutely right. But it certainly would have, saved me a lot of money, stress, time, and I wouldn't have ended up, fighting for my life. So I will, this is why I talk to people like yourself, because I want women to understand that there are so many different options out there that are not presented to us, that are much kinder for our bodies and a lot less stressful. So I love the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And on that note, I guess I would just piggyback on that, is that, people think of IVF as sort of the quick fix, but I cited those statistics a few minutes ago because it's really not. It's not the guarantee. And I think that people assume that lifestyle, managing your stress and nutrition, et cetera, is the long road, but really not always. I see really profound changes in just 3 months, but I say 3 to 6 months. But, as anybody who's gone through IVF knows, like IVF can easily go more than 6 months,
Yeah, years.
Exactly. So, it's, you get sort of the lifelong benefits of healing your hormones from the inside out and feeling better. And it doesn't necessarily take longer, and it certainly saves money. Yeah.
And it's that lifestyle change that is then sustainable, isn't it? It's not that quick fix that you then can't maintain. It's something that you can take through the rest of your life and apply it to your life to feel better from a mind, body, spirit perspective, which I love.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So aside from the work that you do on nutrition, you've mentioned that you look at it holistically. So you're able to share a little bit more about the work that you do from, you know, a mind, body, spirit perspective with women?
Yeah. And honestly, the way I approach it is not that it's it's not my wheelhouse as much as really helping women understand why it's so important, and then helping them find resources to support them in their spiritual and emotional well-being, because I find that it is such a unique thing. So I like to offer a lot of different tools and say, like, here, try these on for size. And what I'm coaching them in is how to make it work into their life, not necessarily being prescriptive of what that mind body approach is, if that makes sense. So for example, I like to connect women with a lot of resources for tapping or EFT or self-compassion practices or breath work or yoga flows, and working that into the program, but I'm not necessarily the teacher of each of those practices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just opening our eyes to what else is available. And some of the things, I mean, all the things that you've mentioned have made such a difference in my life, pre-fertility journey and definitely post-fertility journey. Another one that was absolutely fundamental for me, and I wouldn't be alive without it, is meditation. And we think of meditation as something that is, sitting for half an hour cross the legs saying, and it puts us off. And actually, like you said, when we focus just on the breath and we do that breath work, we can go into that inner space of calm and peace and help to reduce stress and just be really present in our own lives. Because I think as we go through our fertility journey, we lose that sense of self, and we look back and we go, where did the last however many years go? I haven't been present because I've been so focused on the destination of getting pregnant that I've actually missed out on my own life.
Yeah. And I think it's, that much more important to then check back in on who you are and, being present in your life, because then you are a mom, and that steals away your time and your headspace. And, I think before having a baby, it is just so important to get really centered in who you are and your intentions going forward. Because like you said, it's really easy to get lost in it all. First the fertility journey, and then, new motherhood is so overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that we sort of think that we've got this end destination of, okay, I'm holding a healthy baby in my arms. Brilliant. I can tick that off the list, done. But like you said, then it just begins, because then you're already, if you've been through the stress of the fertility journey for years and years and years, you're already, I know for myself, I felt such guilt in my motherhood journey when I'd gone through hell and back to have my second child. And then for me, I felt like I'd lost myself and wanted to reclaim myself, but I'd been on this crazy journey. And so I was just like, all this guilt around, well, actually, I want to have just half a day to myself to breathe. But I shouldn't want to put her in childcare because I've been through so much to have her, right? So I love the fact that you acknowledge that it is this foundation that you offer people is setting them up not just for that fertility journey, but for their journey through motherhood, which is overwhelming anyway. That when you're already going into it depleted and tired and exhausted and stressed, then it takes an awful lot more to be able to just deal with the normal routines of, sleepless nights and crying babies and not knowing what's going on half the time,
Right. Yeah. So if you can set up a strong foundation to begin with of nourishing yourself, but also getting good sleep. And I like to say making friends with stress. And I say it like that because I don't believe the goal is to get rid of stress. I think that I view stress as a product of having a life that we care about. If we didn't, excuse my language, given SHIT, we wouldn't be stressed about it, right? We stress because we care. So it's more about not letting the stress derail us or, drain our cup, but working with it. And so getting, like you were saying, all of those foundations in place are supportive of fertility, but also of fewer complications during pregnancy. And then, like you said, being able to recover postpartum and have some energy in motherhood, it's so huge.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm glad you clarified that in terms of healthy stress and pointing out that it is because it's something that we care about, it's something that matters. And that is very much why the fertility journey is so challenging, is because it's something that we just really care about. And so there's gonna be that emotional roller coaster ride. If it didn't mean so much, then it wouldn't be so hard. So
yeah. And I don't find that it does anybody any service to say stop stressing, right? As though it's just a light switch, you can just shut it off, right?
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. The amount of people that said to me, "Oh, I'm sure it was just stress." The minute you moved over to Australia, you got pregnant, because I moved over to Australia having just lost twins, and then within 6 weeks fell pregnant naturally, which I was told would never happen. I was so stressed emigrating to the other side of the world. I just lost both of my twins. I was moving to the other side of the world. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a house. Didn't know anybody. Was just throwing my whole life up in the air. And, I was stressed. I remember being on the plane.
That's stressful.
I remember being on the plane, just breathing through each moment, just going, "Oh, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. It's okay. You've got this," So I don't think that it was about stress for me. And then, like you said, saying to somebody, "Oh, stop stressing," it's quite patronizing and quite frustrating in itself, because it's like, well, if everybody could just flick the switch, then we would have no stress in life. So, let's understand about where that's coming from and how we can make it healthy stress.
Yeah, and forgive ourselves for it, like bringing in that self-compassion. That we're in this because we care, and like, I love the way you said that, it's something that we care so deeply about, that of course, we stress about it. We worry about it. We're invested.
Yeah. And when it's something that I think also that we believe from probably being teeny tiny, that this was a role that we were always going to take on. We were going to be, have a baby and be a mum. That's the journey that most people have growing up, is there's that societal expectation that that's what you're going to do, and then you have your biological urge on top of that, to do that, and you've got a lot of judgment and shame and pressure and guilt that then comes into that journey when it doesn't happen. So being able to be compassionate with self and being able to just take a layer of emotions away, because we stack our emotions, don't we? We place emotion on top of emotion on top of emotion on top of emotion, and then we've got to get to the root cause of all of that and then layer it all. It's like peeling an onion to be able to be like, okay, I'm actually dealing with shame. I'm dealing with shame, which is, the lowest vibration. And then what sits on top of shame? Well, we've got anger and fear and, everything else, and work backwards. But it's quite the journey. Quite the journey.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I love that you called that out, because I think it's something that we, I think a lot of people take for granted, that we're sort of in a modern society where men and women are equal. And I think it's not as, like in our face all of the time, the expectations to just be a mom, right? Like women are also expected to be professionals now, right?
Yes.
But
yes.
I do find that is quite ubiquitous, that women really do find a sense of identity in being a nurturer and being a mom. And like, that's who, even before they are a mom, that's a part of their identity. That's a part of who they're going to be. Right. And so when it doesn't happen easily, it's like, you have to have a whole reconciling with like, who am I and what's my purpose here? It's really brings up so much.
Yeah, it really does. So I know that we've already mentioned the checklist that you have. So I believe that you have some free gifts for the audience, which I would love for you to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So bring it. So let's see. I have a few different free offerings. One is I have a free guide to making sure you're choosing the best prenatal supplement for fertility. I meant to put that on my list as one of the mistakes that women make around nutrition and fertility, but that I really don't believe that all prenatals are created equal. Far from it. And there's a lot of really sexy marketing that happens behind prenatals that can fill your Instagram feed, but they really don't provide the nutrition that you need. So I provide some like 3 quick steps to make sure that you're actually getting a prenatal supplement that's going to support your fertility, so you're not just flushing that money down the toilet. I have a 4-step checklist, which is designed for somebody who's really newer to embarking on the fertility journey. And they're like, okay, I want to get pregnant, but my doctor gave me no guidance. What should I be doing? And so it's like the 4 steps of like, here's your checklist. Here's the nutrition, the lifestyle, the supplements, the testing. Like, here's how you get started. And then, of course, I offer a totally free fertility strategy session. So 45 minutes to talk about where you're at, what you've gone through, and what are the best next steps for you.
Wow, that's very generous. Thank you for offering all of those things to the audience, because I'm sure there is something there for everybody.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think you've got it all covered. And how can people connect with you? I know you're on social media, and what's your website address?
Yeah. And so for social media, I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is at myfertilitynutritionist. And then my website is fertility-nutritionist. So that's really the best way to connect with me. And I love hearing from people. So please don't be shy.
Yes, absolutely. And I will put all of those links in the comments so everybody has them. And I would just like to ask if you have any other final words of wisdom for the audience, anything that you wish you'd done differently, or anything that you feel would be really supportive for people to understand as they go through their fertility journey.
The first thing that comes to mind that I'd like to share is just, feeling safe to trust your intuition. I think that almost always the women who come to work with me intuitively know that there's some piece of them that needs healing, even though they go to their doctor and they say everything's normal and all the testing came back normal. I think that if your intuition is telling you that you can heal and that there's other options, to trust that and not let your intuition get squashed by sort of the white coat medical doctor saying, no, this is your only option. Mm-hmm. That kind of, I think women's intuition is really powerful and often dismissed. So
yeah, I think that's wonderful advice. I think that's wonderful advice in terms of any sort of communication that we're having in the medical world at any point in our lives, is that we know our bodies best. And we do get that intuitive guidance all the time around what feels right for us and what doesn't. And it can be very easy for us to lose ourselves in the medical world and get taken down a path that we don't necessarily feel comfortable with. And it can be very challenging. What I found was it's very challenging to seek a second opinion or to challenge whether something is actually right for you. So being able to keep, as you said, coming back to your intuitive guidance is such a gift. It's one of the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves, not just on our fertility journey, but also in life. Yeah, so true. So true. And it's a skill. It's a practice, learning to listen to your intuition. Yeah. Yes. It's that practicing that muscle, strengthening that muscle every single day. And it can be fun. And so I know that you can help people with that. And I help people with that, which I love. And it's free. Well, that's what I also love about it, is that it's something that we all have, and it's accessible and it can be fun. And it really, it changed my life when I started delving into the intuitive world. So I highly recommend it. Fantastic advice. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you, Sarah. It was lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And thank you for all the love and support that you are giving people on their journeys. Thank you. Ditto.